right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from in the world today. And welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. This week is really exciting. We are marking the 1-year anniversary of the world's most famous undiscovered shipwreck, Sir Ernest Shackleton's Endurance, being found 2 miles beneath the surface of the ice-covered Weddell Sea off Antarctica by the Endurance22 Expedition team. So, with some time passed to digest everything that happened on that expedition, we thought it would be an awesome idea to bring together some key members of this expedition to reflect on the year that's passed and what's still to come. So we have an all-star lineup joining us today. We have Expedition Leader John Shears. We have Endurance22's Expedition Director of Exploration, Mensun. We have Tim Jacobs joining us, who you may remember from past events as educator on the ship with Reach the World, the Director of Travelers Programs. And with any luck, we're going to have Heritage Trust Chairman Donald Lamont joining us as well. Connectivity doesn't always cooperate, but we're working on a workaround to get him live into the event. So let's start bringing people in to say hello. I'm going to start with John, Expedition Leader. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Hello, everybody.
All right, John, it's great to have you joining us live today. I am going to bring in our next guest. We have Mensun with us today. Mensun joining us from Plymouth. How are you doing, Mensun?
Hi, Joe. How you doing? Hi, kids. Great to be here.
All right. We've got Tim. Tim, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Joe. Hi, everyone.
All right. The band is back together. Familiar faces. Last time I saw your face. Well, that's not true. I saw a few of you at the Explorers Club, but a lot of times was on the Weddell Sea in Antarctica. So great to see everybody. 1 year has passed. Everybody looks well. And I'm sure you've all just been buried in endurance stuff, Endurance 22. Looking at all those amazing pictures and images and scans and findings.
Yeah, John, you want to start? I mean, what have you been up to this last year?
It's been very, very busy. There's just been so much to do. I think a key thing has been working with Nico Vincent, our subsea project manager and deputy expedition leader, to look at the subsea data and to see how we might be able to get that fully image processed and out available for Mensun and the scientists to analyze and look at. Also, been very busy working with people like the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust. They're working on a conservation management plan for Endurance. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later. So there's been a lot to do. I think I'm still more or less working full time on the project. I haven't had much time for any of my other polar projects.
Well, Mensun, what about you? I know you had a book come out. I mean, I'm sure you've got a lot on the go too.
Yeah, it kind of turned my life upside down in all kinds of ways I didn't expect, Joe. I've never had a book like this before, and I've had to go out there and promote it, which means I was going to say traveling around England, but really parts of Europe as well, and possibly the States soon. It's very exciting for me to be doing something like that at my age. A bit intimidating too, talking to huge halls of people, town halls, where you have 1,000 seats in front of you and 200 people standing at the back. And I'm a kind of quite a quiet guy. I just talk to students normally. So I suffer from stage fright. That hasn't been easy, but I've got over that and I'm starting to enjoy it.
All right. Well, I'm going to bring in some slides here. Let's reminisce a little. Let's go back into the expedition. So it is 1 year later. We've got this gorgeous bundled up team here out on the ice. Obviously excited, obviously celebrating. So let's get into it a little bit. We had that goal to go from Cape Town, South Africa, to the ice-covered Weddell Sea in search of Sir Ernest Shackleton's lost ship Endurance. So just for a moment, what were the feelings like when the ship left the harbor? So much at stake, so much technology piled on, pressure, I imagine. What were you thinking as you started the expedition?
So what I felt as an expedition leader, I was extremely relieved. It had been very pressurized to get all the equipment and people on board. And, sometimes people forget, but this time last year, we were just coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we had to have everyone on board, socially distanced. Everyone was taking lateral flow COVID-19 tests. Before people came on board, they had PCR tests. So we had to deal with COVID. We had to deal with late delivery of equipment. So when we finally set sail, actually on schedule, on the 5th of February, I was very relieved, and I had a big smile on my face as we went out of Cape Town. It was a beautiful day, as I remember. You could see Table Mountain in the background, and I was a happy man that day.
Okay, I'm just going to pop in here. We've got Donald. Donald is on the phone with us from the Heritage Trust, the Falklands Heritage Trust. Donald, do you want to say a quick hello? We've just got the event underway. We've got John, we've got Mensun, Tim from Reach the World. How are you doing today?
Okay, I'm here. I'm struggling with the technology. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Even with technology, we just find another way. We'll just grab a different piece of technology and we'll bring you in.
Sure, that's fine.
So the team was just reminiscing a little bit about the expedition, what they've been up to since. What has the Heritage Trust been up to?
Well, there's been a lot of follow-up to the discovery. I did think that if the team found the wreck, then I would just sit back and everyone would, get on with producing the documentary and books and so on. But it's not like that. The Trust is heavily involved in lots of follow-up activities. They certainly with the documentary, with videos for education, and with kind of the science that was done. So it's been quite busy.
All right. Well, Donald, it's great to have you joining us via voice. What we'll do is, if there's any questions you hear you want to jump in on, you just let me know. I've got you here on speaker. We're working through a few slides. We're kind of reminiscing a little about the expedition, and we're going to kind of move around that way. So, you guys left the harbor, then the next kind of highlight, the next, let's say, obstacle was navigating the Weddell Sea. Anything you want to talk a little bit about that, about how that was getting through those waters? Yeah.
So if I start and then I'll pass to Mensun that.
Sure.
It was it was quite a rough crossing, but we made good time, and we were at the ice edge on the 15th of February. And the ice conditions were very different to when we were last there in 2019. There was a lot of what's called first year ice, so it was quite thin. There was a lot of open water. So we were able to really quite easily navigate through the ice to the search area. It took us less than a day to actually get onto the search box. So we're on the search box on the 16th. So I retained that smile on my face because I thought it was going to be much more difficult. And we made it in good time. And we had a fantastic team on board. The ship's crew, very experienced working in ice. Plus we had remote sensing specialists through a German company called Drift and Noise. So all the time on the bridge, they were getting new information about what the sea ice conditions were like. So we could use that remote sensing satellite imagery to actually guide us. We always wanted to use open water rather than breaking through thick sea ice. Yeah. It's a lot quicker and it saves a lot more fuel to do that. So I was very happy. We got there very quickly.
Mensun, you must have been excited because that means more search time if you're not making your way through the ice.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, as John said, we just got straight in there. There was very little braking except for maybe the last 5 miles into the search zone. Drift and Noise was giving us good satellite data on what the ice was doing. Our ice pilot and skipper, they've had a lot of experience now of working within the pack from our first expedition of 3 years ago, and they worked out ways of working with the ice rather than trying to impose our will on the ice. They turned things on their head and sort of had the ice impose its will on us. They would look for suitable flows in a suitable location, flows that were heading in the right direction at the right speed, and we would go for those. The equipment, there was some teething problems at the beginning, but we got over those. The vehicles we took with them were very different to 3 years before. We had a new team of technicians, and very quickly we got into a routine. And from then there was some very, very bad periods of weather. But then, we had a couple of good days. In those 2 days, guess what? Lo and behold, there was the Endurance.
Amazing. So you touched on the technology already, so I don't think we need to go too in depth on this, but you had new technology. It seemed to be working great. In past, technology was an issue, but it looked like these two beautiful saber-tooth rovers that you had were just doing the job.
Yeah. The difference between the technology we had last year and that of 3 years before was that with the saber-tooths, we were in constant contact with them. We knew where they were three-dimensionally at any moment. So if one of them got lost or got into trouble, then we'd send down the second one to rescue the first. And the other thing was we were actually getting the data back. We were getting images of the seabed back in real time. We were seeing what the robot was seeing. So if, for instance, there's an anomaly, what would you call it, point of interest, then we'd simply switch modes from search and survey and go into inspection mode and go over and check it out. Sometimes it was just drop stones, some icebergs, maybe dead whale, or I don't think we actually ever found a dead whale, but if it was the Endurance, we'd know straight away that it was the Endurance.
All right. Yeah, go ahead, Donald.
Yeah, I think I wasn't so involved in the Weddell Sea expedition, but I think there was a rather more kind of testing and including a factory making sure that all the sensors were in, that they had been tested on the bit of kit, and there was testing also off the south coast of France. You don't have the depth quite that you had in the Weddell Sea, but at least the kit was the main kit was tested out there. So that reduced the risk of things going wrong once you got into the ice and the cold of the Weddell Sea.
Yeah, preparation, absolutely.
Yeah, and Joe, I think a big difference was we learned the lessons from the previous expedition in 2019. The subsea manager then, a lady called Claire Samuel, wrote a fantastic lessons learned report, and then Nico Vincent, who was on board as our subsea project manager and the deputy expedition leader, it was his idea to bring the Saab Sabertooths, and they proved to be absolutely pivotal. They were the key bit of technology, new technology that we brought with us, and it was these vehicles which proved the difference to allow us to find the wreck. So Nico did an absolutely fantastic job getting these vehicles, as Donald said, testing in the south of France, picking a hand-picked team of subsea specialists to come with us on the voyage, and then directing the subsea search in such a spectacular fashion.
Because Shackleton didn't get to test all his equipment. All the vehicles he took with him were not properly tested. And of course, when he got down there, got into the Antarctic, got into the ice, they didn't work properly.
Yeah, well, a powerful lesson for our students here. There's beauty in a failure. If you learn from it, you make changes, and you get out there, good things can happen. So Tim, I think I want to bring you in on this one, the Antarctic science, because you were running around the ship, you were grabbing experts and bringing them live to classrooms around the world, ranging from ice experts to engineers to who else do we have? Weather experts and everything in between. So what was it like to be able to grab those individuals and bring that science in real time to everybody?
Sure. Thanks, Joe. It was a highlight of this experience to get to meet the scientists aboard the ship and get to see what they did in an interesting way. All the science was contributing to the success of finding Shackleton's ship in one way or another, whether it was understanding the ice or understanding the ship we were on better, or understanding how we can navigate to where we were trying to get to begin the search in the first place. I did not fully understand that when I got on the ship, but through many conversations with many members of the science team over this period, I really grew to greatly respect their individual disciplines and how they all contributed to the success of this mission in one way or another. And you can see on this picture, a real highlight was disembarking from the Aegis 2 via this cool crane, which every time I got to do it, I could hardly believe that I got to do this, because it was just the coolest way to travel, to be on this basket suspended from a giant ship's crane, being lowered down onto a frozen sea, and being able to assist the scientists in their work. And I want to pass it over to John to add to this too, because a big impact extending past the finding of the ship and past the end of the official expedition is how this science continues to sort of evolve and roll out and be processed.
Yes, yeah. So it brings back very, very great memories. Because where we are here, we're locked into a nice flow. So Nicky and the subsea team have got the saber-tooth down under the water, surveying the seabed, looking for the Endurance. At the same time, we're getting the scientists out. So I'm directing from the bridge and getting the scientists out onto the ice so that they can collect things like snow samples and ice cores, doing a whole range of important sea ice research, which was a key part of the expedition, because this part of the world is so rarely visited. Very few vessels ever get to this part of the Western Weddell Sea. So any data that we did collect would be extremely important to help monitor the region and see exactly what's happening, particularly with issues such as climate change and whether the sea ice is melting and disappearing in this part of the Antarctic. So it was very important research that they were undertaking. And it was great, like Tim said, for us to go out sometimes to accompany the scientists, to actually walk on the sea ice, walk in the same, if you like, footsteps of Shackleton over 100 years ago, and experience being out on the ice. But most of the time, I can say that the weather wasn't like this photograph. I think in the whole time that we were on site, I think we only had 2 days of sunshine. But when the sun did shine, it was just a spectacularly beautiful place to be. It was wonderful.
All right. Well, I want to get into a little more reflection, but before we do, there's one more highlight that we just can't leave out, and it's this. It's finding the ship. I remember when I saw the first image of the stern with Endurance, across the back, I almost dropped my laptop. I can only imagine what you were feeling on the ship, everything coming together, and what you were seeing on the screens.
Yeah, this is my first image of the ship, Joe. We did 2 dives after we found it. The first was to secure the data, and the second dive was the archaeological inspection dive, and we approached from the stern. So my first view of the Endurance was this very shot here. I could see the rudder laying in the mud. The rudder had been the source of all their problems. When the rudder was torn off, the water got into the ship and she began to go down, and 2 days later they had to abandon the ship. But the view of the stern, the ship's name arced across the star, was just electrifying. And then we came up over that rail that you see there, and then we saw the ship's wheel, and we saw that door going down to the accommodation deck, and over to the right, or what we call starboard at sea, there was Shackleton's cabin. And that moment, it was just a moment of complete and utter joy for all of us. It was fabulous.
So, but I remember that at the actual time when the back deck crew found the ship using the sonar on the Sabertooth, Mensun and I weren't actually on board the ship. We'd gone to, we're getting very worried that we're on day 8 in the search. We only had a couple of days left. And I thought I was going to have to make the very difficult decision to stop the search and pull out, because we were getting much colder weather. The sea ice was freezing. And we went off the ship to try and relax a bit. So when they found it, we didn't know. We were out on the ice. And it was only when we came back to the ship and they called us on the ship's tannoy saying, shears and bound to the bridge. And we raced straight up onto the bridge, and there was Nico with this, held his iPhone up and showed us this incredible sonar picture of the wreck. And I was speechless, absolutely speechless. I couldn't say anything about the next 10 minutes. I was just jumping up and down and shaking hands and hugging people. It was an incredible moment, and it was a lovely thing to be able to share with Mensun and with Nico, and we had Captain Knowledge on the bridge, the ship's captain, and Captain Freddie Lighthelm, who was the ice pilot. They were all there at the same time, so it was absolutely great.
Yeah. So Donald, we lost you for a second, but we got you back. I'm wondering, when you found at the Heritage Trust, what were your thoughts? How did you feel when you heard the news?
Well, it sounds very exciting, kind of unexciting to say. My reaction was relief. It was the thought was they have succeeded. No one was hurt or injured on what was really is a very dangerous part of the world. There were no problems with the helicopters. The doctor, once they got underway, was had not very much to do. But also, the earlier expedition had failed. You learn from that. But if you fail twice, that is much more difficult to deal with, in terms of reporting back home and coming back without having succeeded. So I was relieved for all of those on board that there's tremendous success, and the people back home supporting them who could share in that success.
All right. Well, I am going to bring in some questions shortly, but there's one more point that I want to reflect on before we do. But before that, I want to give a shout out to everybody who's tuning in right now. I can see questions coming in already, so keep those questions in. Keep saying hi in the chat. We've got groups in Montreal, Brazil, Public School 1 in Brooklyn, Cornwall in the UK, Saudi Arabia, Florida, Southwest France. It goes on here, all saying hi. So we're going to get to your questions in just a moment. But the piece that I think we should spend a little time reflecting on, let me jump ahead here, is kind of a two-part here. So we found it. We know where it is. Now what? How do we protect? How do we preserve this wreck site? And maybe touch on as well, how do we keep sharing this story? Because that's so important. This wreck's been searched for so long. There's this big relief it's been found. How do we keep the story alive and keep it going?
I think that if I could chip in on that,
yeah,
too, I think there'll be it will be very difficult to kill this story. I can say there is such an interest that has been generated in the name of Shackleton, in the fact of the discovery, and people are thirsty to know more about it. There's going to be a fantastic documentary coming out in due course, and that will give a real boost. I mean, it will be something that will kind of reach people across the world, and people will want to talk to John, to Mensun, to Nico about their experiences, and to others who were kind of on the ship, to Captain Knowledge and others, to get first-hand experience. And then there's other material that we're going to be making available through schools and other ways. So this story, and it's not one story, I suppose. I say this story, but what is the story? There's the original, there's Shackleton, there's all the people with him, and then there's Endurance22, and John, Mensun, Nico, all the people who were with them. So broadcasters, kind of the images that people will see will stimulate a huge kind of, I think, continuing interest.
And Joe, if I can just come in about the protection of the wreck.
Yeah.
So the wreck's protected under the Antarctic Treaty as a historic site and monument, and the Trust, myself and Nico, with Mensun as well, we're working with the UK Antarctic Heritage Trust and another organisation called Historic England to develop a conservation management plan for the wreck. And that's being written up now, and hopefully a draft of that will be ready in the next few months and ready to go to the Antarctic Treaty parties. So you can get in. So we would see international protection of the wreck, and really help to conserve it on the seafloor for future generations. So I think that's a very important aspect of our work going forward, to make sure that the wreck is properly protected and conserved.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Let's get into a little Q&A action. We've got camera classrooms waiting. We've got people tuning in via YouTube who are going to be sending us in some questions. So happy Discovery Anniversary team. It is so great to see you again. I just, bringing back memories from the events that we did together, sometimes getting up late. Very, very cool to be able to do this and kind of reflect a little bit on what's happened since. So let's dive right into it. I'm just going to stop my screen share here so we get everybody front and center again. There we go. Let's start with the camera classroom. We have Mr. Hancock's crew. They are joining us, and I believe they joined us on several of the endurance ones as well. How you doing, Mr. Hancock?
Last year. Oh, great. It's really nice to see everyone. A few of my students were kind of curious when you were looking for endurance. Did you find anything else down there of interest?
Do you want to start, Mensun, on that one?
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay, well, there were a number of artifacts there, objects, shall we say. I particularly liked the boot that we found, because we knew who the owner of that boot was. His name was Frank Wild, and we have photographs of Frank Wild actually wearing that boot that we found on the deck of the ship. That was an incredible moment. And then we found a handgun. And the guys who were doing all the work with the data that was coming in were quite excited by this. And they came to me and asked about it and said they found a pistol. And I said I didn't think they did. But in fact, they were right. It was a handgun, but it was a flare gun. And that was very exciting to all of us, because we knew the story of how Shackleton, before he left the ship, went on the poop deck towards the stern of the ship and actually fired this gun as a kind of salute to the flag, which was flying from the aftermast. And there it was, just laying there. I suppose the other exciting thing was not so much artifacts, but wildlife, but that's a separate discussion. We were all quite amazed by the amount and the variety of the wildlife on the wreck. I've told the stories of the 3 holes in the deck. They extracted 3 tons of food through those holes, which I am convinced saved their lives. So there was a lot of excitement exploring that wreck for us.
And if I could just come in on Mensun mentioned the marine life. That was quite spectacular. I don't think we quite imagined that there would be these huge anemones and sea lilies and these amazing little crab-like creatures called Scott lobsters. And these lobsters had never been recorded before in the Weddell Sea. And I'm certain that once Nico and his team have finished the image processing of that imagery and it's passed to marine biologists, I'm just really excited that they might even find perhaps a couple of new species never recorded before actually living on the wreck, and that would be a fantastic scientific success as well.
Absolutely. All right, Mr. Hancock, hold tight. We're going to come back your way, see if you have another one. But I want to bring in Lincoln School. We've got several classrooms joining us from Lincoln School today. In the U.S., looks like some 4th and 5th graders. How are we doing today? There they are. Let's grab that microphone. We can't hear the waving and the cheering. We know what's happening. Hey, everybody. Where's our guest? We have a special guest. I'm going to make you big. Hold on. There we go. Tim, does that guy look familiar?
Joe, I can't see the camera right now. I don't know if it's just me, but if it's Seely being held up, it is fantastic to know Seely has got a great home at Lincoln School. Oh, there you are.
Hey, okay. Hey.
That Seely is one well-traveled seal. Very cool.
We're very honored to have Seely here.
All right, let's get a question from the crew. What's on your minds?
What was the name of the book? I know. What's the name of the book? Munson, Mr. Munson's book.
Mensun, what's the name of your book?
Oh, it's called The Ship Beneath the Ice. And you can buy it in the States, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, just about everywhere right now. In the airport, it's easy to find. And of course, there's Amazon.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And when is he coming?
All right, that was an easy question. Let's grab another one. You guys got another one on deck?
When is he coming to the sea?
When does he come to
The States.
see?
The States.
Oh, when are you coming to the U.S., Mensun? I think they want you to visit.
Well, my wife and I are heading over in April. So who knows? Maybe we can do something.
Okay, great.
All right. Very cool, Lincoln School. We'll stand by. We'll see if we can visit you again. I want to visit the YouTube chat for a couple minutes here because we've got lots of questions here. So, John, this first one is for you. You mentioned that you were off of the ship when Endurance was found. Now, how do you feel about that moment? Would you have rather been right there on the ship, or are you happy with the way it happened?
I'm very happy with the way that it happened. It was, I didn't mention before that, but when Mensun and I were coming back off the ice, I was actually very happy. I always like being out on the ice. It's a beautiful experience. And I said to Mensun, today's a great day. I actually said, I think she's beneath our feet. And she literally was beneath our feet. So no, I've got no regrets at all. It was, if you like, a perfect way to walk on the ice and then come back onto the ship and get the amazing news. It was such a surprise. I had no idea. I thought when they called us to go up onto the bridge that we'd lost another AAV, or maybe there'd been a big accident. So it was just an explosion of happiness and joy when I thought it could actually be something extremely serious and worrying. So no, I've got no regrets.
All right, excellent. Let's see, Mensun, here's one for you. Someone here has clearly read, they call it your excellent book. And they say that you mentioned that you thought maybe you saw the ship's bell among the collapsed mast on the deck. So they'd like to know anything coming out of the surveys, any thoughts on if that's what was seen?
Yeah, you talked about the ship's bow. Did I hear you right there, John?
Yeah.
The ship's bow was there. The part of the bow where the anchors are stored, that was particularly interesting because you could see the anchors lashed to the deck exactly as they were in the photographs, which were taken by a man called Frank Hurley. And that was quite an incredible thing to see. But also the deck had been displaced a little bit to starboard and backwards slightly. And there's two reasons for that, I think. The first is we know that the ice actually penetrated the anchor deck, or what we call the forecastle deck. And that obviously dislodged things. But then, of course, it seems that the ship, when it was sinking, whacked the seabed with the bow first. So there's a kind of a jump effect, a reaction, and the deck probably became further dislodged at that moment. The other things on the deck were the deck housing that had been almost completely bulldozed to one side by the ice. We could see how the ice had come over one side of the ship and just kind of shoved everything over to the other side. One thing I forgot to mention before was the ship's bell. That was there just behind the stub of the foremast. But John just said something, it was an amazing moment when we were walking over the ice like that. And it was just like he reported. He said he could feel the ship beneath his feet. And John is how would I put it, scientist by background. He doesn't come out with wishy-washy things like that normally. He's very grounded like me. And for him to say something like that was really quite incredible. And he was absolutely spot on. It was probably the moment when they found the wreck.
Yeah. All right. Here's another classroom. This must be our group in Brooklyn. Is there any plans to revisit the site, look at some more of the items?
Well, certainly at the moment, there are no plans to go back. I haven't got any plans, and the Falklands Maritime Heritage Trust haven't got any plans. And indeed, with all the information that we've collected, the subsea survey was a incredible success. Mensun was talking earlier about the photographic and the film survey, but also we had a laser scanner down as well. So we have a pinpoint accuracy model down to 1 millimeter resolution. So there's a huge amount of data to still to analyze and to process. So there's no need.
Yeah. All right. Wow. When do you think we can interact with that? Will there be a time when the public can kind of almost AR VR tour the wreck? Is that something maybe coming down the pipeline in the future?
I certainly think so. Yeah. I don't know.
We do it on land sites already, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be able. In fact, we've already done it on underwater sites. So it is something very exciting to look forward to. And Nico Vincent, our wonderful subsea engineer, he's actually working on that one.
All right. Tim, I want to... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Donald.
No, just to say kind of, well, as Mensun has said just now, our subsea manager, Nico, kind of would enthuse with you about the possibilities. I mean, what you can do with the data is make the kind of the wreck accessible to people, that people can see it once we've processed and developed the project. But you could kind of have holograms of other things in museums, at exhibitions. You can indeed kind of put on those kind of glasses and see and float around the wreck. That's all kind of going to be developing code. So it all kind of goes to reduce the need to go back, because it becomes so accessible to people in not quite well in their homes and in exhibition places, museums, in a way that wasn't possible historically in the past.
Very cool, Donald. I think you're absolutely right. This story is not going away anytime soon. All right, Tim, I wanted to, because we do have lots of classrooms with us today, we need to talk about the resources. They're still up. They still exist. You can still interact with them. What was it like pulling those together, Tim?
Oh, it was great, Joe. It was so much fun because, as others have mentioned, this is a story within a story within a story within a story. And any aspect of this expedition, even the aftermath of the expedition, you can talk about for days and days. And there's so many ways to, as entry points into this story, whether you're interested in the creatures that were living on Endurance, or you're interested in what it's like to actually live and work on a vessel in the Southern Ocean today, or, whether you like marine archaeology or you like the logistics and expedition planning. There's so many things to get into. And if you go to explore.reach the world, whether you are followed us a year ago and were part of the live expedition virtual exchange, or you're new to this story and you want to live it all over again alongside John and Mensun and Nico and myself and many others, you can do all of that with the live stream recordings and the sort of subject-specific itineraries that you can find at explore.reachtheworld.org. So this story will live on and on and on, and it will be added to in exciting ways, such as upcoming documentary, other sort of film resources, and things that are coming down the pipeline, like museum exhibits where you can walk through with VR glasses. I just think we still, even after a whole year of processing what happened aboard the SA Gullis II, the possibilities, the exciting story threads, the personal stories are still coming to light, and it just will go on for as long as you want.
All right. Mr. Hancock's crew, do you want to squeeze one more in?
Yeah, coming back to Frank's boot. So some of the things you found down there, are there plans to bring up some of the things? Obviously the Endurance can't come back up, I don't think, but are there plans to bring up some of the artifacts?
Should I take that? No, we have no plans to go back and recover anything. I should have said before that we did everything in a proper archaeological way. We didn't touch anything. It was what we call a non-disturbance survey. We recorded and we'll disseminate that information, but we didn't touch and we didn't take.
And if I can just come in as well on that
John mentioned this Antarctic Treaty, an agreement between a lot of countries, and you do not take objects out of Antarctica. You leave them where they are, record them, view them, conserve them, restore them, but do not take them away.
Yeah. So I'm glad Donald made that point, because that was the same one that I was going to make, that, as I said before, the wreck's protected under the Antarctic Treaty as a historic site and monument. So we had to have a special permit to go into Antarctica, which was issued by the British Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office. And in that permit, it was very, very strict that we could go onto the site, we could dive the saber-tooths, and we could film, survey, laser scan the wreck. But as Mensun said, we were not allowed to touch or disturb the wreck in any way. So there was no way that we were going to take anything off the wreck. It was purely a non-disturbance survey.
All right. Very cool. Lincoln School, if you're still back there, turn your camera on and we'll grab another question. I want to make a shout out though, because we were talking about an educator before we got started. Miss Mess Crew is backstage, or sorry, not backstage, but tuning in. So Miss Mess, PS1, good to see you there. If you guys want to squeeze a last minute question in, feel free to pop one into the chat there. Very, very cool. And our 5th grade teachers and 3rd graders at Lincoln School are saying they're still listening in the background. There they are. Let's get away from them there.
Come say hi.
A few of them are still there. Hey, guys.
Hi, guys. It's just me. They had to go back to class. Yes, it's Wacky Wednesday, and we've been on it. So,
Thanks for joining us.
oh,
Very
thank
cool.
you so much. Always a pleasure.
Well,
It
thanks
was
for being
the
with
first
us.
time meeting you all last year, except Joe, who's going to have to come visit Lincoln School now.
Seems to be the place to go. So I'll have to go see Celia in person.
Yes, you definitely need a selfie with Celie.
All right. Very cool. Well, thanks for joining us today. It was great to see your crew.
Thank you, guys. Hope to see you again soon.
So, I should add that as part of our anniversary celebrations, for anyone who's watching and would like to celebrate the anniversary on social media, there's now a Celie sticker available on Instagram. So if you want to add Celie to your online life, Celie is there. Celie's everywhere. It's a fun thing we did to celebrate the expedition.
All right. Well, as fate would have it, a question has come in several times in the last minute from the chat, including from Miss Mess Crew. And they would very much like to know, when is the documentary coming out? Do we have a release date?
I think Donald would better take that one.
We're not allowed to speculate about that, but
Okay.
It's going to be quite stunning once it comes out. That it will not take you by surprise. You will hear about it well in advance when it's going to come out.
All right, fair enough.
Joe, maybe I can add in the spirit of the documentary, I got to witness all the filmmakers, and we've had a chance to talk to some of them over the past year or two. When you're talking about jobs on an expedition and what you do after the ship gets back to port, the process of pulling together this gold mine of footage that was captured by incredibly talented camera folks and directors and all the people on the media side of the expedition goes on long after the ship returns to port and will lead to incredible future storytelling around the expedition. So I'm excited because I saw the footage being shot, and it is stunning. The people who are doing it did an extraordinary job of collecting what you need to tell a story like that in a film.
All right. Well, I think a great way, Tim, you just kind of segued nicely with there's still work being done. There's still things happening. The filmmakers are working hard. I'm sure many of the science crew are still going through data, looking at surveys and things like that. So we're 1 year on. There's a lot of legs left on this story. I wonder if each of you just kind of want to briefly share, maybe either how you're feeling now, maybe 1 year out, maybe something unexpected, or maybe something you're looking forward to diving into, whether it's a survey or, the next step in a project. What's going on right now?
Well, perhaps I'll start with that. I think things have changed quite a lot for me. still working, as I said, very, very hard on Endurance 22. I think the key thing for me has been the connection that we've had with students, young people, but also a whole range of people from many, many different walks of life. We did a big talk in Cambridge in England at the weekend, and we had over 400 people came to that from all sorts of different walks of life who'd all heard about Shackleton and our story, and it was fabulous meeting with them and learning from them as to how Shackleton has influenced their lives, and also for me going into schools. I know we've got public school number 1 on board, and it was an absolute pleasure for me to go and visit them at the end of last year, and to see that this story has made such a big difference to those kids and those students at a whole range of schools. And hopefully our story will inspire them to look at science, technology, engineering as future job careers, and believe that they can do things just like we've been able to do them. So I think it's an inspiring story, and I think it really helps students, young people to really think about reaching for their dreams.
All right. What about you, Mensun? What are you thinking?
I mean, it has totally changed my life. Usually with archaeological surveys and expeditions, a year later, you've moved on, you're on to the next one. And this one just seems to get bigger and bigger all the time. In particular, for me, I'm looking forward to seeing all Nico's data when it's all been processed. I know there's going to be all sorts of exciting discoveries there, and I can't wait for that. So, yeah, I suppose it's the way it's illuminated the whole Shackleton endurance story. I mean, it's just an incredible saga from beginning to end. And if we've done nothing else, then certainly we've really sort of reinvigorated that whole Shackleton myth. And that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah. Tim, you got a front row seat for, history, an amazing expedition. You kind of had your finger on the pulse all throughout the ship. How have you unpacked things?
It takes a long time to take it all in, process it, look at the photos and all of that. But a moment that really sank into me was this past weekend on the actual 1-year anniversary of the discovery of the ship, when we had this WhatsApp chat group for the whole expedition that everyone was on, and just getting messages from South Africa, from Germany, from the UK, from France, from all over the place. A year has passed since many of us have seen each other. Some of us have seen various other members over the course of that year, but finding the ship, monumental, historical, just achieved the goal of the expedition. But it's the people connections, the teamwork, the ongoing work together that has made all of that possible and continues to make this story grow and grow and grow in the way that Mensun described. So it's the people and the friendships and the bonds that come out of an expedition like this that have really stuck with me in moments when I'm not thinking about any particular aspect of the expedition. It's the people that I remember the most.
All right.
If I could expand on that same point, my life has been engaged in diplomatic efforts. You want to see countries cooperating and having good relations with each other. So at the weekend, to see people from several countries who'd been on the expedition, as Tim has said, who worked together kind of constructively and seamlessly, and maintain those relationships and take them forward. That was truly rewarding at the weekend to kind of experience and see, even just from a few of them. And then the other part I would mention at the weekend was how the granddaughter of Sir Ernest Shackleton, hearing about the expedition, meeting the people who had found her ship, and growing with pride and satisfaction about how the story was being told. I found that really moving, and that's another human part of these many stories.
All right. Well, I want to start off, of course, as always, a huge shout out to our students and those who joined us from around the world today. Thank you so much for spending the hour with us and reminiscing a little bit and sending in your great questions. It really was, Tim, a real pleasure to be hosting events pre-expedition, meeting some of the team members while the saber-tooths were being tested, talking to John about what he was expecting, Mensun about some of his career and what was coming up, talking to you, Tim, on board the ship, the excitement in the air just before you guys left. And then all the way along, thousands of students were able to join us and experience this expedition in real time. So absolutely amazing. So great to hear that the story is living on a year out. John, Mensun, Tim, and Donald, it was a real pleasure to have you with us during this anniversary week of the finding of the Endurance.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Cheers, Joe. It's been a pleasure.
Guys, for my technological incompetence.
We worked it out. We found a way. And that's, all expeditions need to be flexible. And, it's not always going to go as planned. So we saw that firsthand.
Okay.
All right. We'll have a great rest of the week, everybody. I'm sure we'll do something again in some capacity. But thank you, classrooms. Thank you, people around the world. John, Mensun, Tim, and Donald. We'll sign off for now. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.